Hello and welcome, everybody who's here, to another episode 11 of The Alignment. This is a very special episode. It's the episode where we finally get to tackle the elephant in the room of Gen AI and quality for localization managers and other people who are dealing with global product. So the title of this webinar today is I Want to Use AI in My Global Product. How can I reduce risk and improve quality? Just a note first about us. We are global app testing and we are helping businesses with their global Gen AI quality right now. Everybody, I think, including people who are in the sort of very top software businesses in the world, are figuring this out. And as quality becomes something that is more statistical, less deterministic, more value-driven, we think that crowd testing, which is what we do, has a big role to play. And we might tell a little bit about that later. But we're also here to understand you guys. Can everybody see my screen? I've just received a note that not everybody can. Just give us a thumbs up if you can see the screen being shared. I'm just going to reshare that for you. Can everybody see it? Yes? Fantastic. See nodding heads. So we want to understand everybody in the room as well, which is why we are running a survey all about Gen AI quality. If you're anything like me and you fidget while you watch things, then this is my green light for you to fidget and do this. My colleague will be posting it in the chat right now if you don't want to do it via mobile. It's just a 2-minute survey where you'll be entered into a prize draw to win $250 worth of Amazon vouchers. Or you can refuse that if that's against your company policy. And you'll get the report based on the survey early. We'd really love to hear from you. And we would also love to hear from you in the episode. So throughout, the way that it's going to work, if this is your first alignment, is that all of our wonderful speakers are going to be talking for 5 minutes or so. But then afterwards, we're going to go to Q&A. And when we do go to Q&A, I've got some questions, but we're much more interested in answering your questions. So to ask a question, you've got to go down and use the Q&A chat function that you can see at the bottom of the bar. If you do ask a question, our panelists will be able to either answer it directly via text, or we'll try and come round and reach all the questions. We'd love it if you did ask some. We have some fantastic speakers here today. So speaking first is Alexis Goes. Alexis is a systems manager for global operations and trans creation at Zendesk. Alexis will be laying down a couple of recommendations about using Gen AI in a globalization workflow. Then we're going to have Guy Walker. Guy is the head of product and carbon technologies at Kraken. For those of you that don't know Kraken, in the UK, there's this fantastic, huge energy company called Octopus. Kraken are associated with Octopus. They're part of the Octopus family, and they do some of the most cutting-edge Gen AI stuff. So Guy is going to be talking about how they have localized an AI product and the learnings from that. We've also joined by Talal Hussein, the Senior Product Manager for Artificial Intelligence at SAP. Talal will be talking about use cases for AI for global products beyond translation and how they can confer competitive advantage. Then we've got Christoph. Christoph is the head of engineering here at Global App Testing. As I mentioned, Global App Testing is working with major software businesses on Gen AI quality right now. So he is going to be talking about a couple of our safety and quality recommendations. Really excited for that one. It's the one that I've heard. And then finally, I've got a couple of questions for Will. Will is the Chief Product Officer at Lionbridge. Lionbridge have launched a Gen AI based translation product, in addition to being at the very heart of localization practices around the world. So I've been speaking for a very long time now, so I'm going to take this opportunity now to step back from the mic and hand straight over to Alexis, who's going to be talking about how generative AI will change the best possible localization workflow. Over to you, Alexis.
Great. Thank you very much, Adam. And thanks for the great introduction. Thanks, Global App Testing, for putting this together. Super excited to be here. As Adam mentioned, my name is Alexis Goys. I'm I'm on the Transcreation Global Ops team here at Zendesk, and I'm the systems manager. So today I'll just talk about how we leverage AI in our translation work, and then a little bit about how the prevalence of AI and the pervasiveness of AI translation is sort of changing the way we work and some of the challenges that it presents. So just a little bit about my team. So the Transcreation Global Ops team is within the marketing org at Zendesk, which means transcreation is a lot of what we do. But in analyzing all of the content that we process, we realized that there is quite a bit that can benefit from an MTPE workflow. So we took this on as an initiative to be some of the leaders in implementing AI solutions within our org. So a little bit about how we do that. So we have AI within our translation management system. We're lucky that we work with a provider that's been in the forefront of infusing their tool with AI solutions. A lot of the, or most of the larger TMSs now have AI capabilities. So you have a lot of options if you're not yet using AI in your tools. So one of the components that we use is generative AI translation. We have MT engines, but on top of that, we can use the AI to improve the MT output. It takes into consideration the glossary and the TMs. It can fix fuzzy matches. The linguist can also use this at their discretion. So if they feel like they want to use AI translation on any project, they can. They can ask the AI for alternate suggestions, alternate translations. There's a proofreading aspect, so you can have the AI proofread. It will suggest grammatical corrections and other suggestions for improvement. You can also use it to fix tags. So there's an auto tag fixing feature with AI. If you're in the industry, you know that tags can be quite a pain. So this has been one of the favorite features that we've been using. There's also an AI review component, so it will automatically select the category and then also provide rationale for the change. This one we haven't seen so much benefit from yet. It takes a little bit for the tool to work, right? So if you're a fast reviewer, you might find it more of a hindrance to kind of wait for it to work and then make the corrections needed to improve the way that the AI works over time. So I think that brings up a good point about some of the challenges with rolling out AI is that, you know, you have to at least give people the option to turn it off or opt out of AI, because if people find it more of a burden than helpful, then they'll get frustrated and you'll end up having a poor or negative user experience that it's kind of hard to come back from. But then also roll it out in a way that folks are keen to use it and interested in kind of exploring and working with it to improve it over time. Right. So the other way we use AI outside of our TMS is through a self-service portal. So stakeholders can use this AI translation portal for internal facing content. So that is that. Moving on, I guess, to my next point. Just looking at the visibility of AI translation and accessibility, and sort of how that reignites the discussion of centralization and what it means for our processes. So, you know, everyone is aware now, like we've seen viral videos of AI dubbing or lip syncing. There's auto translations, captions in Zoom. Chrome also has a plugin that you can see live translated captions for any video that you're watching within the browser. And so there's this new ChatGPT 4.0 announcement that just came out too. I can't tell you how many times I've already been forwarded that video. So everyone's super aware of the capabilities that AI, Gen AI has for translation. And so there's even more pressure on localization teams to reduce timelines, reduce cost, and sort of keep up with the advancements in AI, right? So yeah, as part of a marketing localization team, we have to be aware of these advancements, keep on top of them. And I think this is also where we rely a lot on our partners to work with us on these kinds of solutions and think of practical applications for it. And then also to build the tools we need to actually take advantage of something like a ChatGPT 4.0 capability. And then my last point is just that there is a pervasiveness of AI in products, so native AI translation solutions, which again brings up the old conversation, right, of like not advising stakeholders not to just publish unreviewed content, even though there have been advancements and it's pretty great. It's still not the same as having human reviewed content, and a lot of times it's not appropriate, right? And it's also not feasible. So if you have all these different content systems, if you're working in multiple systems and they each have their own translation capabilities, it's not really feasible to work within each of these systems and kind of manage a decentralized process, right? So I think that's one of the challenges, but then also we need to be cognizant of not putting up barriers to AI translation solutions just for the sake of centralization and sort of gatekeeping translation, because there are going to be use cases where it will make sense and where the quality is good enough. And then it also just challenges us to rethink the how and the why of the way we do things and have been doing things. So that is just some food for thought, and that's the end of my presentation. Looking forward to hearing everyone else's thoughts.
Thanks so much, Alexis, and great to hear a sort of early shot in the direction of you can't just translate everything with a big button yet. I think it's really interesting how maybe the manager perspective versus the kind of localization professional perspective are likely to butt heads on that one. I'm going to hand now to Talal. Just before I do, to remind you, the Q&A function at the bottom, do pile in. If you have questions for Alexis or any of our other attendees, please just pop them down there and we will get to them. I'm really excited to hear Talal's talk. Talal is going to be telling us about some of the use cases of AI for global products beyond translation and how they confer competitive advantage. Over to you, Talal.
Thank you so much, Adam, and thank you, everyone. So welcome, and yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Let's go directly into the question. So when we are talking about the use cases for AI for global products, what comes to my mind is let's look into the direction of ERP, and that is where my expertise and background also comes from. As you know, that ERP system or enterprise resource planning systems can be tremendously complicated. When we talk about AI in the ERP systems, it's all about making your end user, I call the word super soldier. Now, what do I mean by super soldier? Let's take a hypothetical example of a purchasing officer and call her Jenny. She can now rely on automation, freeing her for more important tasks that require her attention. And how is that possible? Let's talk about two use cases here, like we mentioned. The use case number one, morning routine. We all go to work in the morning and then decide, okay, what do I do? And what do we want from morning? We want the most important and most pressing concerns. Let's take the example back of Jenny. And Jenny, what she could do is log into her complicated ERP system, complicated in quotes here, and then ask a simple question. As a purchasing officer, what are the top invoices that require my attention today? Since she deals with a lot of invoices, probably in hundreds, probably in thousands. Now, what will happen? The GenAI bot will give the most pressing invoices to her. In the back end will be a complex AI-driven decision that the system has made automatically. In the normal case, she would go to the purchasing invoices, sort them by due date or sort them by any other urgency, important clients, important customers. In this case, the system has done everything automatically for her. There will be a processing of huge amounts of data to get the deadlines, trends, forecasting information, and every other relevant metric that you can imagine. In this case, what we have done is we have reduced the manual work of Jenny to a simple English line. As a purchasing officer, what are the top invoices that require my attention today? We have overclocked this whole operation of data analytics with the power of AI. This is one example. Now let's take another example for this case. Our purchasing officer, Jenny, now simply thinks, oh, I'm new to this job, and where can I find, let's say, the option to change due date on the invoices? In the previous times, what she would do is she would go and read the help manual. She would ask a senior colleague who could be busy in some other task as well. Or she could go into opening manuals, opening a ticket, or querying the system provider, so software provider in this case, and asking how can I do a simple task and can be more complicated. Now with the power of GenAI bots, the same question can be a simple statement. Ask the system, where can I change the due date on invoice? I mean, it's that simple, you know? So what will happen in the backend? The system First of all, will give an instant answer. How does the system do it? The system here, the GenAI bot, analyzed the entire user manuals, help documents, wikis, best practices, and produced a consolidated answer. The answer in this case could look something like, hi, this is how you can change the due date on invoice, process here, or you can also click here and navigate directly to the change due date invoice tab on the page. Now, this might seem something like far-fetched or in the future, or you might ask, what's the even point of it? The whole reason of this consolidated answers and improving the productivity is actually reducing the total cost of ownership, for example, total cost of deployment, and also the maintenance cost. And now imagine if Jenny could not find it, she would use more time and effort in trying to find this answer, hence open more tickets, hence open more support tickets. Somebody will have to respond, delaying her work. We can reduce all of this effort with the power of GenAI to something as small as asking in one clear English statement, for example, as a language. Now you might think this is far-fetched and not available. I can tell you there are some products already available in the market for that. For example, SAP Joule from my company aims to do not only that, but also go further. And also, this is not the only product. There are other products as well, as I said, and we are exactly aiming for this kind of productivity enhancement coming in the near future to you. I would also like to, before ending this topic, actually also like to touch on one point because that often comes up and I'm sure will come up in questions as well. What is the biggest risk that the people are doing or not doing here at this moment? Now, looking at my use cases, the two use cases that I mentioned, you can already see that the one who is not using AI in these cases is simply missing out on the huge boost of productivity. I call it the super soldiers. You are missing out on your super soldiers. If you delay it or don't implement it, your biggest risk is basically not doing anything. Doing something, attempting it, reattempting it, and then establishing it in doing better is better, and fail, try again, go on, instead of not doing, because not doing anything is the biggest risk that you have. Yeah, so that's it from my side. I'm looking forward to the questions. Hope that helps everyone.
Thank you very much. I thought that was amazing, and I am very excited to hear whether the analysis that the biggest risk is doing nothing is shared by our head of engineering in a moment. So I think that Guy's having a couple of laptop issues, so I'm hoping that we are going to hear from Guy in a few minutes' time when he's back. But in the meantime, we're going to skip Guy for now and head straight for Christoph. Christoph is the head of engineering here at Global App Testing. We've been talking a little bit about our recommendations for reducing risk and improving quality in your GenAI product or content. Christoph, over to you.
Thank you, Adam. So, in Global App Testing, we work with many different customers of different sizes. Some of them, they are already trying GenAI. We've also used GenAI in our own product. So I think that we have a pretty good perspective and viewpoint on what are the most typical issues around safety, quality, and compliance. But I will only scratch the surface here. This is a very broad topic, and just be advised that after the webinar, we will also send you a PDF with more details about each of these topics. But starting first from the safety, my top picks or picks that we should be aware of. The first of them is lack of awareness. In a sense that still product and engineering teams, they don't know what might go wrong with GenAI. This is still a fresh technology. And what we can do as a business to help is to assure a proper prompt engineering training internally for our teams. And additionally, we have to make a space and time to think about the threats which might arrive. There are frameworks for this already available, like agile threat modeling, risk modeling, Stride, this kind of things. And this might be a great first step. Secondly, we have to be aware about the most typical threats. For example, jailbreaking. There is this famous story around the web right now about the airline company which placed a GenAI bot on their website. And they were surprised by the user who somehow convinced the bot to sell them tickets for a plane with a huge discount that shouldn't be even possible. So, you know, in the end, that ended up in court, and company was obligated to cover those costs. So the lesson for us is that if people can abuse those models, they will try to do it. And even further, if they will be like, you know, specifically malicious, they can do something which is called prompt injection attack. And those attacks, they can not only make model to behave weird, but they can actually leak some of the data outside. The data that we've used for the prompt itself for the model, or maybe the data that we've used to train it. All in all, we have to be aware about those risks. Jailbreaking is sometimes being called a screenshot attack because sometimes people will just want to troll you a little bit on your website, and they will try to make model do something embarrassing. Then they will make a screenshot of it, post it on social media, and that causes a brand damage. So we just have to be aware of it. There are things to countermeasure this. There is something from OpenAI like moderation API, for example. There are open source tools like guardrails. You can start with these. More about that in the PDF. From the quality perspective, the first topic which comes to my mind is the fact that GenAI systems are less deterministic by default. And this is just like their nature. And if we are catching ourselves on trying to reduce this randomness, we won't be able to do it like really till zero. There will always be some randomness left. And if we are chasing this, that might suggest that maybe this is not the best tool for this job. That's first thing. Second thing is that because of this randomness, we will have to elevate our quality standard for the feature. There will be more random failures, difficult to reproduce. So we will have to have more mechanism to raise from those failures. Second big problem is hallucinations. So I think this is probably the one which is the loudest around the web. Hallucination happens when GenAI produces output which looks trustworthy, but actually it's made up content. GenAI can even produce made up resources to the content. So it's pretty risky. And if users will realize that you present content which is, you know, not real, you will lose trust. And additionally, they might just, you know, see that there is no value in the content that you produce. So this is risky. Once again, we can mitigate this by specific tools like good prompt engineering, things like RAG systems, things like chain of thoughts or internal consistency. All of these practices can help reducing this ambiguity. And then the last piece is model update regressions. So Alexis just mentioned that it was recently released, the model ChatGPT 4.0. And maybe some of you already think, can I move to this 4.0 because it might be cost effective, it might be better for my business. But probably your team will say that they don't know how the system will act. Will the results of the prompts be different or the same, better or worse? Like we don't have good automated tooling to verify this easily and quickly. Or do we? Maybe. In the PDF, we found a couple of open source tools that you can try now to build automated test suite for this case. But also we highly recommend manual testing because this is still a bleeding edge and those automations are just in the trial phase. Moving to compliance, the biggest thing which is coming right now is EU AI Act. We also have AI acts coming from other countries, but EU is the one which is coming right now. And we will have to do a couple of things to stay compliant. And the first thing is that we will have to evaluate the risk of our systems. And if they will be high risk, we will have to create the entire AI governance compliance. This is a bit similar to GDPR and data governance. Even if our system will be medium risk, we will have to still do a couple of things to stay compliant. For example, we will have to assure traceability of model decisions up to 6 months in the past. We'll have to label all of the data, all of the content that we generate with GenAI in a specific way to make it explicit that this is GenAI created. We will have to make it explicit to the end users that they are interacting with a bot, not a person on the other side. So like with any regulation, you can imagine this will help us stay safe and secure, but this will be at the cost of speed of delivery of the product. And finally, till the end, if you are thinking, what can I check now to see if this compliance will be easier for me or harder for me? What can I do to prepare? There are checklists online from AI Guardian, OWASP, and also other websites which help answering those questions. See how close you are, how risky this will be for you to stay compliant. And I think that's mostly it. Remember about the PDF, there will be more interesting stuff inside. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Christoph. Our final guest today is Will, the Chief Product Officer from Lionbridge. I don't think Guy has come back yet, so he might do in after Will speaks. But for now, we'll press on with the questions. I've got a couple of questions for Will, who has been working at Lionbridge and leading their product efforts there. First, what are some of the biggest things? So with Lionbridge, you're working with lots of clients who are managing their localization efforts, managing their translations, and who are maybe starting to introduce AI into their processes there. What are some of the big things that you see clients getting wrong when they start to do that? What are some mistakes that you would expect somebody who's looking at doing that could make?
Thanks, Adam. I mean, great question, right? Great question. I think as I sort of think about think about how to answer that. I sort of think back to over the last sort of 20 years, 30 years, every major innovation that's sort of come along into the market, every technology-driven innovation, whether that was sort of Web 2.0, for those of you that were around and can remember that, the move to the cloud. Then there was this sort of big data theme, right? And all sorts of other things that have kind of happened. Composable content is sort of a small revolution that's happening on the CMS side, and now into sort of generative AI. And what if you look back and sort of reflect back on each of those, the organizations that have been most successful at leveraging those capabilities have really the one thing that's really sort of anchored in anchored behind that has been that everything they do has been driven behind a business goal, right? The danger that organizations can have is that there's this shiny new toy, this shiny new technology, and we could do some amazing things with it, and this sounds really good. And the answer is you probably could do some amazing things, and all of these things look and sound really good, but the goal is not to fit the technology to the business problem. The goal is you have to be really, really focused on the business problem. You really have to understand what you're trying to achieve, and then you understand how the technology can help or hinder you in your delivery of that business problem. I think two other things that I see, sort of organizations, really struggle with, right? And again, I'll say this is not just about AI. This is, I think, about any major kind of transformative technology innovation that's happened. Is sometimes it's quite hard to lose sight of where's your expertise and where do I need help. Again, if you ask any developer in the world, they'll tell you that every piece of code that they didn't write is suboptimal because they write the best code, right? And it's a true statement, right? It's the same thing. You give someone a new piece of technology, it's one of the reasons I love working with great developers, because they'll tell you, hey, I can figure this out, I can make this work. But at some point you have to know, and you have to be really honest with yourself about where your boundaries of expertise are and where they're not. And localization is an art, right? It's a craft. It's sort of quite complex, and so we see people like really struggling with that, sort of with that boundary. And then I think the last thing I'll just say is as you think about sort of AI, right, and you think about any of these sort of new things that are that can help and drive your business forward, really help accelerate your ability to solve those really sort of pressing business problems that you have. That it's really, really important to make sure that you understand how you're going to measure success, right? And what that sort of looks like. And part of that is going back to your business problem in the beginning, right? But the other part of it is making sure that, let's say that you're trying to introduce AI and an LLM-based solution into your problem. How are you measuring it, and are you holding it to the same standard that you held the people to that were perhaps doing that activity before? Do you even know how to measure that? right? One of the things that we see is, you know, sort of in the localization space is, you know, we have people coming to us and saying, unless the LLM is perfect, I'm not interested. Well, you know, that's kind of interesting, but you know, actually language, the beauty of language is that actually it's objectively right up to a point, and then it's highly subjective. There is no perfect, right? And so, you know, what you're taking a process which is implicitly imperfect, right, and is implicitly subjective, and we see people trying to hold it to an objective standard, and that makes it really difficult, right? It makes it very complicated.
My second question, and I think you've answered this a little bit already, but I think it'd be good to just flesh it out a little bit more, is on acceptable levels of risk. So we've had a couple of panelists comment on the risk involved in using AI. In this case, in kind of ramping up a content output or a translation output.
Yeah.
And the challenge there is that it kind of changes the maths. You know, we have a quality process in place, and that quality process has been engineered from the expected costs and outputs of like a manual process. And then suddenly this changes the maths of how much and how quickly you can put things out. And we have to reconfigure what is an acceptable level of quality compared to the business goals that I want to achieve with the higher output. Do you have any advice that you give either to clients or just yourself in terms of how somebody who's struggling with that trade-off should be thinking about it and should be communicating about it, and in terms of the balance that they're going to come to?
Yeah, so I think so you know, it's a great question and a tricky one, right? I think you know, one way I think about risk, right, and I think a lot of organizations implicitly do this, a lot of decision makers do this, is they look at risk of you know, sort of, you know, explicit versus implicit risk, right? So one thing I would think about is, okay, maybe I can do something cheaper by using AI, so that sounds really good. But if I'm putting out, let's just say I'm putting out my annual report to my shareholders, and I'm going to use purely AI to go and translate that because I want to put it out in a couple of languages, you know, the brand impact or the financial impact might be really high, right? So sometimes you got to think about what's the impact of what you're, you know, sort of what you're trying to achieve against a couple of different sort of vectors, right? Because I think there's a financial component, there's a vector of time to market. Like, am I going to miss that opportunity? Am I going to, like, you know, this weekend, for those of you that follow the English Premier League, right, it's the end of the season, right? So if I wanted to say congratulations to either Arsenal or Man City for winning, I only have a very short window to do that, right? And so my risk is actually about, you know, sort of about my time, less about my sort of quality. The analogy that I might use, Adam, right, is I think you talked a little bit about it in terms of, you know, you referenced business problems, right, and, you know, sort of in your question. But if you think about it, like, everything has to, it's not a one size fits all model, I think, that you have to think about, right? So think about it in terms of, like, I have to eat 3 meals a day, or I'd like to eat 3 meals a day, right? I can go out and eat, and I can go, you know, and have a really nice fine dining dinner, and I can go and spend a lot of money, and it will take a lot of, you know, a long period of time, but maybe I'm going to have a really great experience with that. And maybe I want to do that every day, but I can't afford to. So that's okay. But, you know, maybe I do that on special occasions. There's other times when I've got the kids in the car and we're finishing a sports game. We got to get something really quick, and I'm going to go to the drive-through fast food, right? And I know I'm going to get a certain level of output. It's not going to be fine dining, but it's going to be every single time you get that, you know, that burger and that fries, it's exactly the same. It's going to be fast. I'm going to know exactly what the economics look like. And that's also a satisfactory outcome for the problem that I had at hand, which is, hey, I needed to get something, you know, need to get something fast. Sometimes I need to eat a salad, so I go and get the salad. So I think about it. You've got a lot of choices, but you have to, like, be really, really explicit about what are you trying to achieve, and then take a short, medium, and long term. Like, really think about what's the impact of those choices really going to be. Like, if I eat fast food every day, maybe you know, maybe I'm going to need to go on a diet, right? Or my doctor won't be so happy. So maybe that's not a great result for me. If I eat fine dining every day, well, also my doctor might not be happy and neither will my bank balance, right? So you have to make those kind of trade-offs, right? And you have to sort of think about what's the short, medium, and long-term sort of impact, right? And how much risk are you willing to take, within that blend in order to sort of achieve the goals that you've got in the short run. So hopefully that helps sort of answer the question a little bit. It's a tricky one, right? And we've now deployed AI, LLM-based localization for more than 500 companies globally. And I can tell you that not all of them, none of them are the same, but actually at some point you can kind of triage them all together. And really it's just about like, how are you making the right choices today, but do you really understand what the impact is downstream? It's interesting and complex.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Will. I want to open this discussion out and bring the other panelists in now. I'm not sure that Guy's going to be able to get back to us, but I just have a couple of notices on, and then we will get this slideshow off the screen, and it'll be more like a conversation. So first things first, if you are enjoying this episode, then you should come to the next episode. It is happening in 1 month's time. It happens on the Wednesday that's closest to the middle of the month at this time of day. So if you want to join us for the next one, it's all about how you can overcome local user distrust. If trust is an issue that you're facing in different countries in which you're live, that's the episode for you. You can register now. It should be live on the site. This was just an advert for Christoph's sheet. We're going to send it to you, but this is what it looks like. And then finally, please do listen to our podcast. It's all about building global products. We've got a range of really exciting episodes for you, people from Microsoft, from Google, and I think that we are likely to release an episode about MasterCard on Friday, which is really exciting as well. And then also, here is the Lionbridge Trust Framework. There is a solution brief that Lionbridge have shared with us all about how you can deliver trust in your GenAI LLM technology. That will be posted in the chat, and we'll also send that out in addition to our own info sheet. Finally, let's get aligned. I'm always a fan of that transition there. I don't know whether everybody else is. We've got 2 questions from the audience, so I'd love to start by just diving into those. Nicholas asks about transparency. So what do different panelists think about the use of transparency in AI? Is it that, are they putting in processes to make sure that everybody's kind of squeaky clean and is clear when they're talking to a bot or when they're reading bot translated content? Or what's the best thing to do about that one other than to sort of be transparent? Is there no one going to volunteer for that one? I could pick on Christoph if I was being really mean.
I was going to raise a hand. So this is a great question. It nicely corresponds with the compliance topic that I was mentioning. Like if everybody would be that transparent with it, they wouldn't have to regulate this and enforce this behavior. So indeed, this is a problem. I think most commonly this is because when people figure out that they are not speaking with a human person, they might immediately lose patience and try to speak with a real human being. So some companies might try to avoid making this explicit from the start. Even, because they also believe that the bot could answer majority of the questions. And yeah, I think that with this regulation which is coming, it will be enforced to bring more transparency. And in terms of a timeline, I believe that this one will be important to be placed in the course of like 12 to 24 months, not the next 6 months, but it will be required even for medium risk systems. So for majority. So I guess that in the next years, we will see a lot more transparency than there is now. And for the second part of the question, if customers, users have a preference for different models, are they given an options? I'm not sure how to answer this. Probably depends on the product. I will think about this, but maybe in the meantime, give voice to Will.
Over to you, Will.
Thanks. I think it's this question about transparency is really interesting, right? And I think, again, like I think about it, there's the the direct user, perhaps, right? And then there's a downstream consumer, right, as well. So if I think about, think about some of the things that we do with companies, we are using AI, we're helping them create content for their websites, right? We're using them to help localize content for their website, right? Do I have to, where does transparency kind of begin and end, right? So for that user, that marketing manager, perhaps that we're working with, right, it's going to be pretty explicit because we will have an explicit agreement with them. But to that end user consumer, do I have to be transparent with them? Do they have to be transparent on their website that, hey, some of this content was created with AI? Like, I think we just have to be really careful about, where where we think the transparency needs to begin and end and why, right? It's a really important question, right? And I agree with everything that Christoph said about, like there's experiences where you're going to have a different feeling, right? If you think, oh, I'm immediately starting with a bot or not. But I just think, like we also have to be quite careful, right? And I think, if you look at other industries where there's heavy regulation, like life sciences, they try and there's a lot of pressure on supply chain to also be compliant with all of the regulation that they're beholden to. It's not always necessary, right? And it doesn't always sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't, right? So I think the answer is, I think you should be transparent where it really matters, but be really clear on why it matters and to who, and then be thoughtful about it, right?
I'd love to. So I want to, Christoph's put his hand, and by all means answer the question again, Christoph. But I would also love to expand a little bit on the related themes of user education, and then how you kind of present it, if it's an AI feature rather than AI translated content,
yeah.
how you present it to users, and how that kind of comes into the way that we think about trust and quality in AI.
I can add my 2 cents. So from our perspective, like in our tool that we're using, whenever there's an AI feature, it clearly states that it's using AI, it's using GenAI. So users are fully aware that that's what they're using. Then in terms of like publishing the translated content, we're not publishing anything that's not reviewed. But like from an internal perspective, I think we advise people, if they're going to use raw, unedited GenAI translation, to put a disclaimer that it was translated that way. More of like a covering our own butts, right? So like, this did not come from our team. You're accepting all of the risk and responsibility for the quality of this translation that you're doing if you're going on your own and doing it yourself.
There's been a related debate that I'd draw guest attention to as well, about automated subtitles on YouTube. If you're aware, the idea was that it's an accessibility issue, and they were rolling out automated translations to all users, but that was discouraging actual creators from typing out a word for word transcription. And there was a kind of debate around quality versus actual volume, which is that you got many more subtitles, but actually they were of inferior quality at the moment of rollout. So I'd love to come on to Muna's question now. So Muna asks, what insights have the panel gained from their process of discovery and user research phases that have helped ensure the GenAI products and workflows meet the evolving needs of global customers? Is there anything that you found that's unexpected that has made you strategically realign? What was that strategically realignment? So is there anything basically that surprised people in research phases of a rollout that has actually made them change course? Is there anybody who's had an experience that is like that on the panel?
I mean, Adam, I'll just jump in quickly and say that I think that the space is evolving so fast that we're actually changing course almost every day, right? And so, like we learn more about how to use tree of thought based prompt strategies. We learn more about the linguistic capabilities that sit, within the models as we develop things further. I think one of the things that we've been quite interested in is whether localized prompting makes a difference, right? So if I want to do something with content in Spanish, do you get better results if you prompt in Spanish, right? And we're finding that we do, right? We do get better results if you prompt in that language, right? Which is a language company is good and encouraging, because that gives us gives us some strength. But I mean, the reality is that the space is evolving so fast, and some of the tools that sit around it, a prompt approach that you thought might work before, now we're, then you start, then you start developing, these other methods, tree of thought, etc. And you change and you pivot on a real time, sort of almost on a real time basis. And it's from a product perspective, it's incredibly exciting. And from a product perspective, it's incredibly frustrating, because you go down a path and then you're iterating very, very fast to get sort of some of these real time results. So I would say the answer is we're doing it all the time, right? This space is evolving far, far faster than anything I've ever seen in my career, which is, exciting and scary, right? It's good.
We did have a couple of questions in the entry form, which were about AI and job replacement. But I just want to sort of put a twist on it. The one person asked how localization managers specifically should evolve their career, given the way that AI could impact things. And also, I guess, the part of that question is how do you become one of the super soldiers that Talal described in his talk a little earlier. So I wonder whether anybody wants to come in on that, in terms of, if you're somebody who is creating things that can be generated, what steps should you be taking to safeguard your career and make sure that you're getting the most out of the new tooling to continue your employment and proceed?
I can start on that. Oh.
Please go ahead. Please go ahead.
Okay, sure. I was just going to say, so I mean, there's lots of information out there. I think one of the main things to start doing is be curious, not be someone who's resistant to checking out AI solutions and using it. Just start using it. Think about different ways you can use AI to help you in your work, right? So it's not so much about replacing, but helping you and making your job more efficient. So if you're showing that you're more efficient, you can do these things faster, better, like using AI, and you know how to use it effectively, then that's going to definitely be a plus for you in your career. There's also so much like free courses out there online that you can study.
Talal, how does somebody become
Yeah.
one of your super soldiers?
Yeah, I would actually double down on that, and I would say that there are probably two schools of thoughts here, So one is that I'm afraid of AI, they are going to be the Terminator, T-3000 something. And the other school of thought is humans will always be humans and we will never be replaced. I think the reality lies somewhere in between both these things. So if you are too afraid, you're not going to do anything. If you are too confident, you are going to lose anyway, So the ones who are going to adapt and move forward in life are the ones who are going to succeed. That's how I would put it. And how do you safeguard your career with it? Please don't hold back on information. This is not the way to safeguard your career, like sitting on information, Provide everything out there, be more efficient. Take time to relax. If there are managers listening to me, give your employees the chance to relax. So if you have automated certain parts of your tasks, your manager listening to me, please consider that. Give your employees the time to relax. Automation does not mean more work, it means more efficient work. So there is a thought mentality not only for the employees but also for the employers. Create super soldiers, but don't burn them out. So there is a certain balance to it. So always focus on learning, always use the latest tools.
We've got a sort of similar question. Somebody this is from the catchment form on the way in, they ask, on reducing risk and improving quality, how do you find the balance between risk and innovation? And how do you feel that it differs for your particular industry? So I guess for a lot of people, we've been talking about the balance between risk and higher output in translations and localization, but it'd be great to hear from the panel how they're thinking about risk versus innovation in a more general way in terms of that AI use. Talal.
Yeah, I can take that one for the ERP world. So as you know, ERP has been more of a, I don't know of a better way to put it, but more like a government office, you know. So whatever you develop has to stay, it has to be predictable. It has to be like an airlines industry. You don't update every single day. You don't push innovations. You don't push like an app update, you know. There is a lot of thought into it. There's a lot of process in controlling the updates and everything. In terms of innovation and in terms of how we use AI for innovation, I think there is not much change to that. I would go in this way, try the products, create a testing version or early adopter care program, as we call it. How we are doing at SAP is, and I'm sure many other companies do the same thing. We call something like early adopter care program. And in this case, we admit some customers, a certain number, those who try out our features, co-innovation councils, as they're also called, so co-innovation projects. Try with them, see if it satisfies them, what doesn't satisfy, can we work with that, can we improve that? In the end, create an outcome. Is it a shippable product? Are our customers who were already on board with us, they accepted the risk in the limited scope and the time that they had, also a sandbox environment if possible. In these ways, you can actually innovate and also reduce your risk. You don't ship and a half-baked cake, you know, in the ERP world. It just doesn't work. You cannot crash the top, let's say, the top S&P 500 company or something like this. You cannot crash their system with the innovation just because you wanted to be innovative. So this is the way to do it. Be transparent, be open, develop co-innovation programs, develop partnerships that go longer than 5-year span or 1-year span. That's how I would do it.
Can anybody else comment on the balance between risk and innovation for their industry specifically?
Yeah, look, I think Adam, it's innovate or become irrelevant, right? So the risk is, for me, is pretty pretty stark, right? Now that doesn't mean that all the things that we've done in the past are no longer relevant. In fact, they're very relevant, right? Because for certain outcomes, that human-based risk, much lower risk work is, continues to be highly relevant, right? So it's not out with the old, in with the new, right? But if you don't innovate, you're not going to be able to offer people solutions that fit all of their content problems, right? So it's from a business perspective, it's innovate or be irrelevant, right? That's my view, right? It's only from a localization provider.
Christoph, over to you.
So what I can say is also something that we often speak about in global app testing is that quality evolves and changes, like the bar raises every year. So I fully agree with what Will said. You have to innovate to stay relevant. But in terms of like balancing on this difficult needle with the risk, you can probably, the bigger you are, the more you have to lose. You can lose. So you can apply mechanism like narrowing down the innovation change to a small group first and see how it goes. The same way as we do with product and engineering in terms of feature flags. When we release something that we expect might not go the best, we try to narrow it down the change in terms of scope, see how it goes, compare it, and then make a full release. Pretty basic advice, but we can also apply it here with GenAI.
Fantastic. Okay, cool. I wonder whether as well, because I know we've talked a little bit about the differences in quality flows when it comes to testing content output or a GenAI product more generally. I wonder whether there's any difference in the way that people are actually researching whether that product or that content is working for different users, whether the fact of it being a GenAI product changes that at all, or whether we think that the normal way that we research products and research whether a product is working for users or whether content is working for users, whether they're still applicable in much the same way that they were before for a GenAI outcome. Is that a question that anyone can come in on, or shall I, move on to the next one?
Yeah, I can take that one. So, I think, as you know, AI is very much a human-based system. So, I think, as you know, AI is very much a human-based system. So, I think, as you know, AI is very much a human-based system. So, I think, as you know, AI is very much a human-based system. So, I think, as you know, AI is very much a human-based system. So, I think, as you know, AI is very much a human-based system. So, I think, as you know, AI is very much a human-based system. So, I think, as you know, AI is very much a human-based system. So, I think, as you know, AI is very much a human-based system. So, I think, as you know, AI is very much a human-based system. So, I think, as you know, AI is very much a human-based system. So, I think, as you know, AI is very much a human-based system. So, I think, as you know, AI is very much a human-based system. So, I think, as you know, AI is very much a human-based system. So, I think, as you know, AI is very much a human-based system. So, I think, as you know, AI is very much a
No worries. Okay, cool. Well, I'll tell you what then. I'll ask one final question from the list. I would love each of the panelists to just give a bit of parting advice. If there's lots of people who are on this webinar who are starting to roll out GenAI products around the world right now, or GenAI translations, in terms of we've all had experience working with GenAI here. I wonder if you could give a parting piece of advice on how to make that rollout as successful as possible and mitigating the worst risks associated. If we could get one from each of the panelists here. Will, do you want to go first?
Sure. Yeah. Just don't lose sight of what you're trying to achieve, right? Don't get wrapped up in the technology and the shiny new toy. Got to stay focused on what your business goals are and why. And that if you do that, that will hold you in good stead. And talk to Lionbridge, obviously. Right?
Fantastic. Christoph?
Well, I would say that probably even going from a free open source training on prompt engineering with your engineering team will help them narrow down the hallucinations dramatically. So even this simple advice will help, and also reduce the impact by narrowing down the change, maybe feature flags, this kind of stuff.
Alexis, do you have a parting piece of advice?
Sure, I would say piloting is a good idea. Find folks who are like champions of AI and are curious about it and want to use it and test it out with them. See how it goes.
And finally, Talal.
Yeah, I would say transparency, openness. If a problem can be solved with AI, it can be solved with AI. Don't focus on the technology, as Will said, and I have the same advice, just because something can be solved doesn't mean it needs to be solved the way you are thinking. The customer wants the solution, the customer doesn't want the technology. I think this side should not be forgotten. Thank you.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, everybody. And thank you very much for joining. I'm going to let everybody go now. And do come along to our next alignment. That is going to be a month from now in June. It's going to be all about local users and how to solve local user distrust. And please do, if you haven't already, take a look at our generative AI survey and fill it in. We're going to be talking all about the poll results there. To identify what people are doing in terms of their GenAI quality process and do a report on that. So dive in there. Thanks, everybody. And I will see you next month.
Thank you.